Grandiose, Malignant, Covert, and Communal. Those are the 4 types of narcissistic personality disorder we're going to talk about today. And we're also going to talk about the ways that you keep trying to avoid these people, but essentially it's still not getting to the heart of your protection with your boundaries. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to episode 63 of the Positivity Experience. It's all about narcissism. Check it out. Hey everybody, and welcome back to episode 63 of the Positivity Experience. I am your girl, Lori. I am back from Park City, Utah. Can I just tell you, West Coast skiing, if you're an East Coast person here in the States, it is so much better. And it was just awesome. Like just being around the mountains. And if you followed any of my Instagram stories, you saw how beautiful it was. I'm very much a mountain girl. Again, where I live, I'm not terribly far from the beach. I like the beach. I prefer the mountains, kind of like them all, but it was just a nice vibe. Travel was fine. Always hit some turbulence over Nebraska because of I guess we were over like a tornado, which was, I didn't get to see it. But it was an overall good vibe trip. But I'm back, baby. And now we are going to chat about something that you guys have hit me up on every one of my platforms and said, please talk to me about narcissism. And I absolutely am going to. It's a huge part of my platform, not platform like social platforms, but of the work that I do. And I might touch a few buttons today, right? Because there's going to be things that we're going to talk about. You're going to be like, oh my God, is that me? I mean, maybe it is. Right? But we are going to jump into it. But I wanted to do a little bit of, every time when somebody goes in my DMs or my YouTube or something like that, if it's something where I see somebody's making progress, I really want to share it with you guys. So this is from Kim Wood in Canada. She says, this is on Instagram. She says, hi, Lori, this is Kim, your friendly Canadian neighbor. Of course, Canada, hello. Everybody in Canada is friendly. I know, generalization. I just want to say thank you so much again. Thank you so much for making your podcast. I have listened to over 24 now. She wakes up and she walks to work listening to a new one each day. You bring me anywhere from tears to laughing out loud. The tears are because you just make me understand so much more about myself and how I need to heal, which goes beyond anything anyone else has ever explained. And also your personal story is just so touching. You really are so special. I keep spreading the word about how great you are and how much you've helped me. I feel like I've really taken a huge leap in improving my mental health, even in the past couple weeks, keeping up with my gratitude journal and tuning in every day to a podcast. I do want to be a Patreon of yours if you are still going that route. If not, I will keep up with what I'm doing. And if need be, I will book a one-on-one session. Yes, you should probably do that anyway. But yes, I am going to do the Patreon. I promise it's on the to-do list. It is coming. But first of all, I wanted to share that with you, not because she was like, oh my God, you're amazing, but because it's giving her this foundation to do her work, right? And she hit a key on there is that gratitude journal. Last week, we talked about it in last week's podcast on the fruits of the labor of gratitude. Your entire life needs to be focused upon your gratitude. So the fact that she's doing her gratitude journal every day, Kim, you're a rock star, 365 days a year, 10 minutes, set that timer, pen to pad. Remember, inconsistent actions gets inconsistent results, right? So yeah, but I wanted to share that. And so many of you guys have like reached out and said how well you're doing with your journaling. You're getting active. You're starting to set boundaries. I mean, again, and I will always say this, I'm only the GPS, but you're driving the vehicle. I'm just kind of going, oops, you don't want to go there. That's a dead end. Let's back it up. And that's kind of where we're going to jump in today, right? Because one of the biggest things with narcissism is people tend to throw the word around a lot. And that's another reason why I wanted to do this podcast, because people who are confident and who have self-love will be accused of being a narcissist. You are not. There is a vast difference between narcissism and being confident. But people who aren't there yet will absolutely call you a narcissist and will absolutely start to target you. Okay? That's very often narcissists will do that because they want to take control over you. And that is one of the types of a narcissistic personality type that we are going to talk about today. And as you heard in the beginning part of the trailer, And I mean, there's subsidiaries within all of the types, right? So I wanted to kind of give you a pretty much overview. And I think this is where people are like, are people born narcissists? Like, are they made narcissists? So while narcissism itself doesn't have like, okay, this is the exact reason that it happens, there are definitely some things outside of also genetics, right? So like there's a genetic composite there, but it's a component there, but it isn't always that. But narcissistic personality disorder, it does happen within parenting styles as a child, right? Think of being overprotective or over gloating. Like, oh my God, this is the best person on the planet. Oh my God, I love you so much. Oh my God, like over loving. And I don't even mean over loving, over boasting, that can create a narcissistic personality disorder. The reverse of that, or the flip side of that, would be neglect and abuse. Okay. Again, genetics are also, can be a factor of that, especially if you've seen other people in your life kind of have that. But as far as like being an excessive pamperer or having unrealistic expectations from parents, like you must be perfect, you must get straight A's, you must do this, it can become extremely problematic, right? And so you kind of have to understand that because it is a psychological condition. All right. And it's something that you got to realize it isn't always somebody intentionally doing something. Very often it's the actual opposite of that, right? So like being clear in this, because here's how this works. Every human has some level of a narcissistic trait, right? Think about a child and let's say a 9-year-old, okay? And 9-year-old wants to go to a friend's house. So the 9-year-old goes to mom and says, hey, can I go to Beth's house? And mom goes, no, you know what? I don't think it's a good idea. Like you got that D or whatever on your grade. I think we're going to sit this one out. Okay. So they get depressed and disheveled a little bit. They go upstairs. They think about it. They text dad. Hey, dad, I'm wondering if it's okay if I go to Beth's house. Okay. Well, that right there is a narcissistic trait. Doesn't mean that they're going to grow up and be a narcissist, right? Like don't read more into it. My point to that is, as human beings, we carry a certain level of narcissism from birth, I think. Like not officially diagnosed narcissism. I said like a type of a trait. And what I mean by that is we want what we want when we want it. And then we're taught how to share, right? So like a baby or a 2-year-old goes over to somebody and sees a block, they take the block. Oh, I like this block, my block. Well, they have to learn, hey, no, we have to share, right? So again, there's that really fine line because part of that is something where it's not like a DSM-5 diagnoses, right? Like that's just part of what we carry. So if you find yourself getting caught up in any of these things that we're going to talk about, I don't want you to panic and be like, oh my God, I'm a full-blown narcissist with full-blown NPD. Not necessarily. Okay, because your personalities in general, and I promise we'll go deeper into like different levels because I've done a lot of human studies and human behavioral studies. So some of these things are just kind of natural. So I don't want you to over diagnose yourself because that's going to become a little bit problematic, right? But I do want you to think about it this way, right? So think about NPD in general. So narcissistic personality disorder, right, it's kind of the extreme state. All right. Self-absorbed is, again, there's this fine line that people have a hard time being self-absorbed with self-love. And people who have never had self-love and who have never been taught it may think that your self-love or your boundaries is you being self-absorbed. First of all, that's not a true statement. Being self-absorbed means that you don't really give a damn about who you hurt or what the level is carrying. Now, when I say hurt, this means legitimate hurt. This doesn't mean setting a boundary and somebody's mad at you because you set a boundary. Two totally different things. But they're also manipulative and they exploit relationships. And this is one of the types that we're going to talk about today. If you haven't seen Inventing Anna on Netflix, you may want to tune in. She's very much one of these types. And that's kind of it. You're leveraging relationships to just get what it is that you want. So let's kind of jump into the different types here. So let's talk about Grandiose. Okay, so you've heard of like grandiose personalities. Some of us carry, like I said, some of it, but this is where it's like, I'm better than you and I know I'm better than you. Okay, I didn't say you're more grounded and you're more balanced, but when you get there, you don't do it thinking that you're better than someone. Okay, so let me give you an example of that, like a real life example. When the pandemic was going on, and I on Instagram, I had even talked about it on a story because it happened right in front of me. I was going through the Dunkin' drive-through, right? And this was like when we really couldn't go out much. We weren't on lock, like it was this past year, but it was still like, everybody was still kind of watching what they were doing. And so I'm at Dunkin' and I have my window down. It's like summertime. And I can hear there's a little beef going on with the lady in the car and one of the regular people who are at the window, who I adore. And I can hear these things happening. And then I hear a bunch of kink, kink, clink, 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 clink. I'm like, what the hell happened? So they speed off. I'm like, okay, what the hell happened there? So I go up and I'm like, what happened? I was like, I kind of heard half of that. What happened? She said, I don't know. It was just, I undercharged her and I needed more money. And she was yelling at me and she threw money at me. First of all, who the hell are you to throw money at anybody? I'm like, change, right? It doesn't matter. That's a narcissistic, grandiose mentality. You're less than me because you're at Dunkin'. You're less than me. I'm better than you. If you, and this is where you got to check yourself. If you think of, and I'm going to use McDonald's just because people always say that a lot, go get a job at McDonald's, right? If you look down your nose at someone working at McDonald's, you are part of the problem. That's a you issue. Stop comparing and thinking that you're better than someone, right? Because now listen, I'm not saying that you're walking around as a grandiose narcissist, but I'm going to tell you this. If this is a constant thing where you feel like somebody needs to be at a certain like upper echelon and you're super judgy and, the self-centered behavior is like, hey, I am right. I am always right. And I'm going to be in the spotlight with my friends who we are all going to be judgy together. That's not okay. Okay. And remember, like people who are in this category, the empathy is kind of one of those things where they say to you, hey, I'm going to go into what I know pleases you so you can in turn tell me how amazing I am. So think about the people who seek external validation. Right. And I don't just mean because you're insecure and you're trying to just see if you're doing something right. I'm saying where if I know that I'm going to do a favor for you and I'm going to make sure that you know how great I need you to be super grateful because I'm amazing. Okay. That's going to fall into the grandiose. And again, I'm just giving you the overviews and we'll go back and we'll dissect some a little bit. Now, this is the kind of listen, they're all not great. Okay. But this is the one that I think this and the next one is the ones that I run into the most, in my practice. I mean, grandiose as well, but it's probably not one of the most problematic ones that at least are in my practice, but this one is part of it. And that is malignant narcissism. Okay. So like, how in grandiose where it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do something for you to manipulate the situation. So then you think I'm this amazing person. And then when I get you on the hook, I'm going to be like, ha ha ha, I got this person. That's more grandiose, right? But this is going to be a little opposite. So this is opposite of that. They do not care about what's going on for you. They're going to smear campaign you. I have been the victim of several smear campaigns. Most people have, either publicly or within family. And let me give you an example of what that is, what that would look like. So when you start to establish boundaries, you start getting your self-love, you start to establish boundaries, the person or persons who could before manipulate the situation, make you feel bad enough into doing something, guilt you, shame you into doing something. When you start standing up for yourself and when you start really getting that self-love and you start establishing these boundaries, they start to panic, right? A little bit of panic because those manipulative tools aren't working anymore because you've developed that self-love. So what do? They can't get you necessarily. So they're going to go around to the people outside of you. Your sisters, your siblings, if you're on socials or if you're an influencer, they're going to try to do a big time smear campaign against you to make people around you think poorly of you. Okay. This is yet another tactic for them to get to you. This is another tactic for them to cut you off at the knees, right? And this is where you falter a lot. So let's say you're like, yeah, I'm really getting it together. I'm really starting to build my self-esteem, really starting to build my self-love, starting to develop boundaries. The moment you start worrying about a smear campaign, I'm not telling you that you're not allowed to have feelings. You're allowed to feel some kind of way about it. But if you start to go around and plead your case on how no, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Why are you doing that? Because I'm always going to stand by this. And this is a fact. If people who are running a smear campaign on you gets people to have a judgment on you without them knowing what your story is or coming to you to be like, hey, I'm Switzerland, I'm staying in the middle somewhere, they're not your people. The moment you let a narcissist of any way, shape, or form, the moment you allow that to happen is the absolute moment they're winning again. They're winning again. And when they're winning again, you have got to be careful to allow yourself to get pulled into that smear campaign. Because essentially what they've done is the initial way that they used to get to you doesn't work. So they're going to notch it up a level. These are your malignant narcissists. These are the ones that really start to kind of like get super, and again, it's not about which one's worse or whatever, but I'm just saying these are the ones I run in a lot, right? And it's almost borderline, okay, so it's like it's like a sister to psychopathy, right? It's probably one of the closest ones that we would say might be similar to, being a psychopath or a sociopathy. And the thing is it isn't, right? And it's hard to see it if you don't know it. But typically, even a malignant narcissist may not want to get in trouble, right? Like, they don't want to, cause it to look bad on them anyway, but they want to smear you to appear better than you, because then when you stand up for yourself, if you choose to go that route, now you look like the crazy person that they're saying that you're crazy because you're erratic and you overreact. And now that you're going to everybody and pleading your case, now you look like that overreactor. And this is a really tough one, right? I'm going to kind of give you some tips on this here in a little bit, but I'm just covering them first. Now, a covert narcissist, sometimes depression is often misdiagnosed. Not saying that you wouldn't have it, and they can go hand in hand, but sometimes it's being a covert narcissist. Okay, so let me explain this to you. So you've had trauma. You guys know I've had trauma. All of you have had trauma on here. When you live in that trauma and you stay in that trauma, and then you say things like, the world is just against me. I will never do good. They will never see how amazing I am. They'll never see what a great journalist I am, because I will never get the opportunity. I've never gotten the opportunity before. I'll never have it. It'll never happen. And it's that. And then it almost can be something that looks a little bit like insecurity, right? Or like low self-esteem. Not, again, you can actually have low self-esteem and it's not narcissism. I'm just giving you an example of this, right? So a covert narcissist, right? You have covert, you have overt, right? They will come across very victim. And now this is me saying this part, right? Everything else is like a research study, but this is me saying this part based upon what I see in my own practice, okay? When you refuse to get out of your trauma. And when I say get out of your trauma, that means you do the work to heal it. You are never responsible for the trauma inflicted. You are 100,000,000 times responsible for healing it. No one else is. So when you get caught up in blame game and live in blame game and refuse to take the steps and use the tools that are there for you. So very often, sometimes you don't even have the tools, right? So that's a little different. You don't have the tools, so how can you use something you don't have? But when you have access to tools, and we're in a space these days, a social media space, where you always have some form of a level of tools, good, bad, or indifferent, you still have access to them. The moment you refuse to release control because you want to stay, and I say want to stay in the victim mentality, because you were victimized, right? We've had this conversation. When I went through the abuse with Dad, I was victimized. I'm not a victim. Now, if I live in that trauma, I'm a victim. And if in turn I go, well, because I had such a shitty childhood, I haven't been given the opportunities. And if I live there, now I'm part of a covert narcissist personality disorder. And I mean, again, it's not so black and white. There are gray areas there, but I'm just trying to give you the overview so you can kind of understand it. Because very often, especially if you've had abuse and neglect, you can fall into this category. I'll tell you, this is kind of part of that category too, between this and Grandiose. They can kind of like overlap each other, is when you're expecting you out of people. If you are expecting someone to respond to you the way that you would respond to them, and I don't just mean every now and again, right? That's just human stuff. But if this is like a platform for you, you're like, nah, you better show up here for Thanksgiving. You better do this. If it starts to become controlling AF, that is narcissism. That is narcissism. So whether it's you or somebody around you, that's what that is. Okay, so there's different levels of that, which kind of goes hand in, well, not that one specifically, but the fourth one is kind of like a newer subsidiary. Like in 2012, there was a research paper that kind of broke this down. So it's just kind of like a subsidiary of a couple of different of the narcissist traits, but it's called communal narcissism. And you're like, what's that? So communal, think community. You go on Becky's Facebook page or Instagram, and every post is her at an event. But it's not just any event, not like a TMZ fun event. I'm talking about it's a charity. I'm giving to this charity. I'm doing this to this charity. This is my platform now. I want you to see how amazing I am because I'm doing all these great things for the community. And it's funny because sometimes they're judgy AF on the same communities that they're doing it. And they're doing it like having you know what, different, totally different. But I kind of want to give you an idea of kind of what I'm saying. And again, it doesn't kind of go in alignment with this, but kind of. And there is a level of narcissism that comes with this. So a high school friend of yours passes away. You haven't seen him in 20 years, but you know what? The parents asked you to come. You're like, absolutely, I'm going to show up. And you go, you're not going to speak. You're not going to do any of those things. You're going to be a little sad. It's going to bring back some nostalgia. It's going to think about your own mortality, but you're going to sit there and you're going to watch it and you're there because the parents asked you to come. Beautiful. Love that. Here's where the problem is. All of these people start coming out of the woodwork. They didn't even know the person that well and didn't even really like them. And now they're sitting there at the funeral blubbering. Oh my God, I like them so. No, you didn't. You didn't. Stop making this about you. So it's kind of like, if you've said to, and again, it's a little bit different because I'm talking more community based, but that's narcissism. Don't show up somewhere and blubber and say, oh my God, we were so close. You weren't. Why are you making this about you? This isn't about you. Right? So I'm just giving you an example that sometimes those things happen and you don't even realize that you're doing it. So don't show up after you ain't talked to somebody in 20 years. Like, unless the parents ask you or whatever. Why? Why? To do what? To make yourself look good? For why? See, you won't do that if you're content, comfortable with self and carry empathy. Okay? And so another thing to be aware of, right? In community, if you are giving and donating, and you're doing things with the expectation of being thanked, oh my God, thank you so much. Don't do it. If you're doing it with an expectation of, oh, I donated all this time and effort to this charity. Look at me, I'm so amazing. That's a problem. You now are a communal narcissist. There are ample things. You guys know this. And I say this to you only because when I'm making a point, I donate time, some monies and different things to a lot of animal things. I've spoken, I've traveled. I don't always post it. I don't always discuss it because I'm doing it because I want to do it because it makes me feel good to be able to help animals when animals were there during my trauma. I choose animal charities because that's near and dear to me. Right? Now, that being said, I might post a picture of me with a rescue dog because I'm spreading awareness. I'm not posting that I'm giving a $50,000 million, new number, check to an organization because I want to feel good about myself. Now, I know with the Ukraine situation, there's been a lot of celebrities and a lot of people who've come out and they've raised money. That's different. That's different, right? Like if you see on TMZ or CNN or Fox or whatever that says X amount, this celebrity just raised $12 million for Ukraine. different. First of all, that's the news source and somebody else talking about it, number one. And number two, it also brings awareness, because sometimes we're looking to help people, but we don't want to be scammed. So I don't mean things like that. I mean where everything that you do, it comes with a level of expectation. I'm going to be kind because you better be kind to me. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to donate time and money because I want to be noticed to be a good person. I want you to think good of me. That is a sign of narcissism. Now, here is where you guys drop the ball. When you're trying to walk around and avoid these people, not just these people, situations, trying to be in control of things. You are walking around trying to analyze situations and prepare yourself to not get involved with a narcissist. Wrong approach. That's right, wrong approach. And I'll tell you why. Because you're so busy avoiding, you're not busy living. You're constantly on prep mode, constantly on defense mode. You got to stop that. Okay? And how do you stop it, you say? Let me tell you. Self-love, mindfulness, and gratitude, and boundaries. That's how you do it. You don't set boundaries for other people. You don't set boundaries to prevent running into a narcissist. You don't set boundaries to prevent dealing with mom who's a pain in the ass because she's constantly controlling. That's the wrong reason for boundaries. And that's not even boundaries, that's walls. Okay, so a boundary is when you protect your peace. In order to avoid these types of situations, and quite honestly, you're not always going to avoid these types of situations. We live in a world where you don't live on an island. So we live in a world where you will run into people like this, whether it be friendship, whether it be relationships. This will happen. But instead of trying to analyze it and be uber protective and walk around with this armored layer, focus on your damn self. You are so worried about other people's actions or people not getting over on you or people not running some kind of a scam or a game on you. Always keep your head on a swivel. As a girl who grew up in the hood, I'm telling you, always keep your head on a swivel. You're right. Be aware of your surroundings. Go a little bit down the road. Don't live in paranoia. Don't be like, oh my God, I can't do this because this might happen. No. That's different. Head on a swivel is just awareness, not paranoia. Two totally different jams. Okay. So when we're talking about narcissists, stop trying to change the personality. Okay. It's literally not going to happen. Now, a lot of people will say, well, yes, narcissism carries a lack of empathy. That's a very true statement. But however, also keep this in mind, just because someone isn't making you comfortable and making you feel better and worrying about how we're going to get you through your trauma doesn't mean that they don't have empathy. Now we got to look back on self. That can be one of these MPDs, or it could be something else that comes along with that. So don't get it twisted and say somebody doesn't have empathy when you're basing it on what you deem as empathy. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. It's going to get you in trouble every single time. So let's say you see somebody and they're like, okay, gosh, Becky's always competing with me. That's because they have a constant fantasy of trying to be better than other people because that's going to make them feel good, because narcissism is always going to carry a level of insecurity, whether they want to tell you that or not. That's what's happening. So why are you going to worry about somebody having competition with you? That's a competition of a race that they're running by their damn self. Don't join a race that you don't need to be a part of. All right. You may also see people bending over backwards just to hear the thank you or, oh my God, you're amazing. Do it because you choose to. No need to keep inflating the ego, somebody else's ego. That's their stuff and nobody else's. So it was funny. Earlier I had mentioned Anna Delvey or Sorkin or whatever from Inventing Anna on Netflix. It's a great show. She'll watch it. But, she was willing to take advantage of other people to get what she wants, right? Ooh, that goes into malignant narcissism. I'm going to create false relationships so I can get to the next level of what I want. You can't do anything about their narcissism. You got to get that completely out of your head. Stop trying to understand a narcissist. What you need to do is protect your peace. And the way to do that is through boundaries and self-love. love. Okay. Now, don't get arrogance twisted with self-esteem and confidence, because you might look at somebody and be like, oh my God, they're so arrogant. And you will be accused of that, by the way, multiple times when you start setting boundaries. When you put yourself as a priority and you start setting boundaries, you will be called either narcissist, arrogant, self-absorbed, self-centered. You got to let it run off your back, because that's part of the plan. That's how they run the game, is to make you feel some kind of way. Now, this is where you got to check yourself. Okay, this one. Envy and jealousy. If you're chronically envious, jealous, and trying to figure out why you're being held back and everybody else is, you got to check yourself on this one. Yes, I just told you. We know that Narcissistic Personality Disorder, NPD, as defined by the DSM-5, it is something that is definitely related in some ways to an upbringing, either being over pampered or not pampered enough or having a crap childhood. Absolutely. We know this. We know where it comes from. But what are you going to do about it? If you don't like that, you work through that. It's not like you're a narcissist and you're just stuck with that diagnosis. If you choose to, right? Not all narcissists are going to be like, oh my God, I'm a narcissist. I really need help. It's not going to happen that way, right? But again, stop staying with somebody, which is a whole different podcast on trauma bonding. We will do it. We will have that conversation about trauma bonds. I've had them talk about it in my book, like a whole chapter I wrote on the plane. And so yes, it's a real thing, right? So I don't want you to judge yourself and be like, what's wrong with me? Why am I falling victim to these, to all of these people who are traumatic, and, why am I bonded to? Okay, let's not do that. That's not what this podcast is about. This is to identify. So if you're checking yourself and you're constantly trying to compete with someone, or you need to step on people to get to the top, well, you might just be a damn narcissist. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. But that doesn't mean that it has to change. So, okay, I'll give you an example. I'll use a mom thing. Mom's super controlling, always complaining, always doing this. Instead of going, oh my God, what is her problem? Why do I have to put up with her? Yeah, that's a question. Why are you putting up with her? As a kid, you're kind of stuck there. But as an adult, why are you? Why? Because she's your mom? What does that mean? What does that mean? Your boundaries are for you. It doesn't matter if it's your mother, your father, your brother, your wife, your husband, your kids. I don't care. Your boundaries are yours, just like their boundaries are theirs. So a narcissist will be like, I don't like that boundary because I don't understand it. They didn't give me an explanation behind their no. That's narcissist. That's a narcissist trait. I didn't say that you have NPD. That's a narcissistic trait, to think that someone owes you an explanation. They don't. So don't get it twisted between narcissistic traits and narcissistic personality disorder, because we're all going to carry a certain level of various traits. That doesn't mean that you're a full-blown narcissist, right? And the feeling of entitlement. Hello, Karen. Like, hello? The feeling of entitlement. Like, look at teenagers. All teenagers seem to be narcissistic, right? Like, it's all about them. And unfortunately, we live in a news cycle that's 24/7 news cycle. It's, you have access to everything 24/7. And it just becomes that kind of thing. And if you put people on a pedestal, right? So if you put people on a pedestal and be like, I can only rock with these like super, like you've heard of people say the 1%ers, let's say, and they kind of have their own bubble. Let's say you have, and I'm just thinking to people, the Kardashians, you have Kanye, you have all these people who are celebrities, right? And to some level, anybody who's like acting and things like that, they can love the craft, but there is a level of narcissistic traits that come along with that. Now, it becomes problematic when you are in such a little bubble that you can only see things from your 1% population, right? Where it's like, can you believe my private jet was out of my Fiji water? Oh my God, that's like terrible. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you feel like those are the only people that you can run with, that's a problem. That's a problem. So again, the way you're approaching it, you got to check the way you're approaching it, because the way you're approaching it is to avoid it and analyze it. They don't care. Cry all you want. Cry all you want. They don't care. They do not care. But you know what the irony is, right? And I just said this to you before. Narcissistic personality disorder, they carry low self-esteem. You just can't tell that. Think about how much work it is, right? To be in a relationship. Doesn't matter male, female, because people for some odd reason think that it's just men that are narcissistic. Not even remotely true. And I'm saying born at birth. But let's say, you're in a relationship and everybody in the neighborhood loves your partner, loves them. And your partner's really there, like helps with things because again, accolades. Oh my God, Bill is so sweet. Like he's not doing it because he wants to do it. He's doing it with the intention of something, right? Again, I'm going to go back to this. If you do something to be kind with an expectation, you are manipulating a situation because nobody has to do it back to you. Nobody has to thank you. You might want it. Now, again, if somebody keeps using you and using you and using you, that's for you to separate. That's for you to distance, not for you to try to change them. And to think you can change somebody is narcissistic, right? So that's what I'm saying. There's so many webs that tangle down in there that isn't necessarily a DSM-5 type diagnoses, but you do carry certain traits. And so what do you do about it is you focus on yourself. You think, oh my God, that's not narcissist. That is you taking accountability and ownership for your best mental health and the space and where you want to practice. So I think that's a good place to leave you today. If you like me talking about this, I promise we can go into trauma bonding. We can go into a bunch of different topics. Slide into my DMs, please, over on Instagram. It's official Lori Wheeler. Obviously, my YouTube is the same as the podcast, The Positivity Experience. TikTok is Lori Wheeler. I have tons of emails. You can, the website, if you want to send me an email or book sessions or have access to other socials of mine, the website link is going to be in the description of this podcast. And yeah, let me know if you want me to get into this a little bit more, because remember, if you're blaming other people for your situation and we're now 20 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years outside of what that trauma is, we need to address that fact because it's not that responsibility. We know how you got here. We got that. We don't need to beat it like a dead horse. But what are you going to do here? Are you going to live in the woe me, woe me, woe me? Or are you going to do something about it? And that's where I come into play. Okay. So I love you guys. I hope you guys have a ridiculously amazing week. Have a rock star week. And also know that you can be kind to other people, but never neglect yourself. Be kind to yourself and do that gratitude journal 10 minutes every single morning. Check it out.